If you ever wanted to get into Italian horror but felt completely overwhelmed by the bizarre titles, convoluted plots, and endless filmographies, you're not alone. The Giallo is one of cinema's most striking subgenres, an intoxicating blend of murder, mystery, psychedelic fashion, black glove killers, and hyper-stylized violence. But knowing where to start can be tough when every third movie apparently involves a stuffed bird, a lizard, or a tarot card. Tonight, we're laying out the ultimate Giallo starter pack, essential films designed to take you from total beginner to seasoned investigator. We're tracing the path from the genre's early, gothic-tinted murder mysteries to the grand, operatic masterpieces that defined 1970s Italian cinema. Consider this your roadmap through the neon lighting, the razor-sharp straight razors, and the haunting synth scores. If you're ready to step into the mystery, here's where you start.
The Girl Who Knew Too Much, 1963. Mario Bava's The Girl Who Knew Too Much is widely regarded as the foundational spark for the Italian Giallo, blending Hitchcockian suspense with a proto-slasher sensibility. The story follows Nora Davis, a young American tourist in Rome who witnesses a brutal murder on the Spanish Steps. However, when the police find no evidence of the crime, Nora is forced to play amateur detective. As she digs deeper, she discovers a series of decades-old alphabet murders, leading her into a web of paranoia where the line between reality and hallucination begins to blur. Stylistically, the film is a masterclass in chiaroscuro cinematography. Though it lacks the vivid psychedelic colors of Bava's later work, the black and white visuals create a high-contrast world of deep shadows and sharp angles that mirror Nora's growing psychological unease. Bava utilized the architecture of Rome not as a tourist backdrop, but as a labyrinthine trap. The film balances its tense, voyeuristic sequences with a surprising amount of charm and humor, preventing the narrative from sinking into total darkness, while still maintaining a persistent sense of encroaching threat. For the modern viewer, this entry is essential for understanding the evolution of European horror. It establishes several key tropes that would define the genre for decades. The amateur sleuth, the mysterious killer in a trench coat, and the obsession with a witnessed trauma that no one else believes. While it is more restrained than the blood-soaked giallos of the 1970s, its technical precision and atmospheric dread remain incredibly effective. It is a sophisticated, stylish thriller that serves as a bridge between classic Hollywood suspense and the transgressive, stylized violence of modern Italian cinema. Blood and Black Lace, 1964. Someone in a faceless white mask is killing models at a prestigious Roman fashion house. The victims are strangled, burned, and drowned, each murder more elaborate and stylized than the last. The police investigate while the killer methodically works through the staff, with each death revealing another layer of blackmail, forbidden affairs, and drug use hidden behind the glamorous facade. A secret diary belonging to the first victim is the key to the mystery. Everyone wants it, and everyone is willing to kill to keep their secrets buried. Mario Bava directs what is essentially the blueprint for the modern slasher film. While the mystery is engaging, the plot is secondary to the visual design. This is a film about color, light, and staging death as an artistic tableau. The cast is filled with striking figures who look gorgeous and terrified in equal measure, but the real star of the film is Bava's revolutionary camera work. The killer's iconic look, a featureless white mask, black leather gloves, and a fedora, became the template for the genre that was copied for decades to come. The violence was brutal for 1964, but Bava frames it with the elegance of high-fashion photography. The whodunit mechanics are convoluted and ultimately take a backseat to the atmosphere. This film is about watching a master paint with light and violence, using a murder mystery framework to justify increasingly surreal and beautiful death scenes. It remains the ultimate example of Italian horror's visual excess, proving that in a Bava film, how you show the violence matters just as much as the violence itself. Hatchet for the Honeymoon, 1970. Mario Bava's Hatchet for the Honeymoon opens like a fairy tale about love and marriage, and then quietly dismembers both. Set in the glittering world of fashion, it follows John Harrington, a handsome designer with a secret obsession. He's a serial killer compelled to murder brides in hopes of unlocking a repressed childhood memory. Unlike the slashers that would dominate the next decade, Bava's film isn't about shock or suspense. It's about descent. Every frame pulls us deeper into John's unraveling mind, a place where beauty and violence have become inseparable. Bava shoots the film with an almost painterly precision. Saturated reds, mirrored surfaces, and elegant camera moves turn Harrington's life into a surreal museum of vanity and guilt. Stephen Forsythe plays him as both charming and haunted, his voiceover offering a disturbingly calm window into madness. When his ghostly wife begins to torment him, part conscience, part curse, the film slips fully into the psychological horror that defined Italian cinema of the era. It stands as one of Bava's most personal works, a bridge between the gothic horror of the 60s and 70s, the giallo thrillers that would soon dominate the European scene. It's stylish, strange, and deeply introspective, a film about a man dissecting love the same way he dissects his victims. Beneath its surface beauty lies a truth that defined 1970s horror, that the most terrifying monsters often hide behind perfect smiles. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, 1970. Dario Argento's directorial debut establishes the Giallo template while demonstrating fully formed visual mastery. An American writer in Rome witnesses an attempted attack in an art gallery, but becomes trapped between glass doors, able only to watch helplessly. When police make him the primary witness, he begins investigating himself, convinced there's something wrong with what he saw. Some crucial detail his mind can't quite access. The writer navigates Italian bureaucracy and mounting danger as his investigation makes him the killer's next target. Argento shoots Rome with stunning visual sophistication for a first feature, his camera prowling through modernist architecture and finding menace in geometric spaces. The gallery attack sequence becomes iconic through its use of glass, space, and helpless observation. The kill sequences are staged with creativity that would define Giallo. Straight razor attacks, memorable set pieces, and mounting body count. The title comes from a crucial clue involving a painting, typical of Argento's love of obscure details driving mystery. The finale's revelation delivers one of Giallo's more brilliantly constructed solutions. The truth hiding in plain sight throughout. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage announced a major talent, its influence on thriller and horror cinema immediate and lasting. A Lizard in a Woman's Skin, 1971. A wealthy London woman experiences vivid nightmares about murdering her neighbor, a hippie who throws drug-fueled parties in the apartment above. When the neighbor is found stabbed to death exactly as depicted in the dreams, the woman becomes the prime suspect. Her husband tries to prove her innocence while she questions her own sanity. The investigation uncovers layers of deception, sexual repression, and a political cover-up that threatens to bury the truth under the weight of the protagonist's psychological unraveling. Florinda Bolkan plays the troubled lead with genuine fragility. You're never quite sure if she is a victim or a cold-blooded killer. The supporting cast navigates a deliberately disorienting narrative that blurs the line between high society respectability and the swinging underground. The dream sequences are what stay with the viewer. Psychedelic imagery, a room full of vivisected dogs, achieved through incredibly convincing practical effects that famously got Fulci accused of actual animal cruelty. Fulci shoots London's upper-class repression with contempt, using Ennio Morricone's unsettling jazz-infused score to amplify the feeling of a fracturing reality. The mystery itself is convoluted even by the standards of Italian thrillers, but that is the point. Fulci is more interested in the breakdown of the mind than a neat resolution. The title refers to the cold reptilian nature hiding beneath the protagonist's polished exterior. It's a masterclass in style over substance, showing how the beast within can eventually shed its skin. A Bay of Blood, 1971. Someone murders an elderly countess in her lakeside mansion, setting off a chain reaction of killings as various parties, all with claims to the valuable bayfront property, start eliminating each other to secure the inheritance. The body count rises quickly. A husband kills his wife, lovers betray each other, and squatters get caught in the crossfire. By the end, 13 people are dead, and a pitch-black twist reveals the whole bloodbath was effectively pointless. Mario Bava directs what is essentially the prototype for the American slasher film. The kill scenes here, particularly the machete to the face and the spear through coupled lovers, were lifted shot for shot by Friday the 13th Part 2 a decade later. Claudine Auger stars as Renata, the Countess's scheming daughter, who anchors the film's central conspiracy. While the dubbed dialogue carries that standard Italian horror awkwardness, the actors effectively sell the required shock and cold-blooded violence. Bava shoots the killings with unflinching creativity. Practical effects show axes to heads, throats slashed, and bodies impaled, all staged with a visceral impact that was genuinely shocking for 1971. The Bay location provides both beautiful scenery and an isolated setting where people can be murdered without witnesses. The photography is gorgeous. Bava lights even the most brutal violence with his trademark color and composition. It's less a whodunit than a who's killing who this time, with the mystery structure taking a backseat to inventive murder sequences. Black Belly of the Tarantula, 1971. A killer is terrorizing Rome using a nightmare-inducing method inspired by the hunting wasp, paralyzing victims with a needle to the base of the neck before mutilating them while they are fully conscious but unable to move. An inspector investigates as the bodies pile up, discovering that each victim is connected to a high-end health spa and a massive blackmail scheme. The killer's pattern leads directly into a world of elite secrets that people are literally dying to keep hidden. The director delivers a giallo that leans harder into the police procedural than most films in the genre. The lead inspector is played with a sense of worn professionalism, a man who is clearly haunted by the cruelty of the crimes he's investigating. The supporting cast is a who's who of European cinema, featuring several iconic actresses, including 3 former Bond girls, who populate the suspect pool as potential victims and red herrings. All of this is set to a haunting experimental score by Ennio Morricone. The paralysis gimmick is the film's most disturbing element. The idea of being wide awake and feeling everything while being unable to scream is pure psychological horror. The practical effects show the murders with unflinching detail, emphasizing the victim's total helplessness. The cinematography captures both Rome's fashionable districts and its seedy underbelly, using the city's cold architecture to build a sense of constant voyeuristic paranoia. Unlike many Italian thrillers of the time, the mystery actually functions as a cohesive puzzle. Clues are planted early, suspects have legitimate motives, and the reveal makes logical sense rather than relying on a wild twist. It is less visually trippy than the work of directors like Dario Argento, but it's much tighter as a classic thriller, trading psychedelic visuals for a grim, noir-soaked atmosphere. Death Walks on High Heels, 1971. A famous Parisian stripper named Nicole becomes the target of a vicious killer after her father, a legendary jewel thief, is murdered for a haul of stolen diamonds. Terrified and stalked, she flees to the English coast with a wealthy eye surgeon, hoping to vanish. However, the murders follow her across the channel. A mysterious figure with piercing blue eyes stalks her, eliminating anyone who gets close. The investigation uncovers a web of switched identities, hidden motives, and blackmail, where the truth is as elusive as the stolen diamonds themselves. Director Luciano Ercoli delivers a giallo that is a masterclass in style and misdirection. Nieves Navarro, performing under the name Susan Scott, is the definitive giallo heroine here. Glamorous, defiant, and constantly under threat. The film benefits from a cast that plays the convoluted mystery with genuine paranoia, making everyone from the obsessed doctor to the local villagers feel like a potential killer. The aesthetic is quintessential 70s thriller. The killer's look, defined by vivid blue eyes and black leather gloves, became an iconic image of the era. The kills are staged with a focus on suspense and composition, utilizing straight razors and knives with Ercoli's trademark flair. The contrast between the smoky Parisian strip clubs and the isolated windswept English countryside gives the film a unique visual texture. The mystery is famously confusing, filled with red herrings and twists that challenge the audience to keep up. But in the world of Ercole, the how is often more important than the who. It is a film that prioritizes visual experience and atmospheric dread, hitting every genre beat with high-fashion craft. For fans of the genre, it remains a top-tier example of how a thriller can be both brutal and incredibly beautiful. The Case of the Scorpion's Tail, 1971. A woman receives a massive insurance payout following her husband's death in a fiery plane crash, but the relief is short-lived. She soon discovers that the money is an invitation for every greedy vulture in her orbit to swarm. From the grieving widow to the desperate investigators and the shadowy figures stalking the streets of Athens, everyone is locked in a lethal race to possess the fortune. As the body count rises, the lines between predator and prey blur until the final shocking betrayal. Director Sergio Martino operates with a relentless, breathless energy. He discards the slow burn approach in favor of a jagged, paranoid thriller rhythm. George Hilton is fantastic as the cynical private investigator, a man who isn't searching for justice, but for his own cut of the prize. Every interaction is layered with double meanings, and Martino keeps the camera moving, rarely allowing the audience a moment to breathe or trust the person currently on screen. The film thrives on the contrast between the sunny, ancient ruins of Greece and the dark, modern depravity of the crime. The murder set pieces are brutal, direct, and stripped of the supernatural flourishes found in other films of the time. There is a palpable sense of urban decay hanging over the proceedings. Even in the bright light of day, the characters are wandering through a labyrinth of their own making. This is a film that refuses to treat the audience like a passenger. It challenges you to keep track of the alliances and the motives as they shift like sand. For viewers exhausted by the more mystical side of Italian horror, this is a lean, mean, and utterly unapologetic exercise in greed. It's a puzzle box that cuts your fingers every time you try to open it, and it ends exactly as bleakly as you'd expect. The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh, 1971. Set in the glittering, upscale locales of Vienna, the story follows the wife of a diplomat who finds herself terrorized by a razor-wielding maniac, all while a past lover lingers in the shadows, threatening to expose her dark, masochistic secrets. It is a masterclass in narrative misdirection, utilizing a complex, twist-heavy script that keeps the viewer guessing about the killer's identity until the final, breathless reveal. What elevates this film above the standard exploitation fodder of the era is the sheer visual polish. Fenech, who would become a genre icon, delivers a performance that perfectly balances vulnerability and ambiguity, grounding the film's more heightened, melodramatic impulses. Martino's camera is constantly in motion, capturing the luxury of the setting, with a cold, voyeuristic eye that makes the sudden eruptions of violence feel even more intrusive and shocking. The film is a quintessential example of how the Giallo combined high-fashion aesthetic with a deep-seated, often cynical, psychological darkness. Every scene is meticulously composed, draped in vivid color palettes, and a swirling, haunting score by Nora Orlandi that has since become synonymous with the Italian thriller style. It is not just a whodunit, but a deep dive into the corrosive nature of secrets and the paranoia that stems from not knowing who you can trust. For those seeking the gold standard of Italian suspense, this remains a mandatory watch. Don't Torture a Duckling, 1972. A series of murders targeting young boys shakes a remote southern Italian village. Fear spreads quickly, and suspicion falls on outsiders and easy targets. As the investigation continues, it exposes superstition, repression, and a willingness to commit violence in the name of morality. Lucio Fulci directs one of his most restrained and socially aware films. Barbara Boucher brings defiance and vulnerability to a role defined by judgment, while Tomas Milian plays a journalist trying to cut through rumor and hysteria. The village feels claustrophobic, everyone knows everyone, and secrets fester in plain sight. The film's most disturbing moments aren't graphic, but prolonged and cruel. A sustained, chain-whipping scene is difficult to watch because of its emotional brutality, not gore. The sunlit countryside is photographed beautifully, creating a sharp contrast with the violence beneath the surface. Riz Ortolani's score balances innocence with unease. Don't Torture a Duckling is Fulci at his most mature. It's a giallo that replaces spectacle with condemnation, exposing the horrors people justify when they believe they're righteous. They're Coming to Get You. 1972. Jane arrives in London to stay with her sister and immediately plunges into paranoid nightmare. Visions of ritualistic violence, strange figures following her, and growing certainty that her life is in danger. Sergio Martino's Italian Giallo blends the genre's typical mystery thriller elements with occult horror and psychological uncertainty about what's real versus hallucination. Edwige Fenech plays Jane with escalating terror, her performance capturing genuine mental deterioration as evidence mounts that either she's losing her mind or being targeted by satanic cult. George Hilton provides her skeptical boyfriend, while Ivan Rasimov brings sinister charisma to the mysterious blue-eyed man who appears in her visions and reality. Marina Malfatti rounds out the cast as the neighbor who introduces Jane to the occult group that might be salvation or trap. Bruno Nicolai's score blends giallo jazz with a cult atmosphere perfectly. The ritual sequences are impressively staged, with elaborate ceremonial elements and genuinely unsettling imagery. The film keeps audiences uncertain about Jane's reliability. Are the visions real supernatural threats or manifestations of trauma? The climax forces revelation that recontextualizes the preceding ambiguity. They're Coming to Get You represents giallo expanding beyond crime thriller into occult territory, creating something that's simultaneously mystery, horror, and paranoid thriller about trust and perception. The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, 1972. A family legend warns that a figure known as the Red Queen returns once every century to claim 7 lives. When a wealthy relative dies and a red-cloaked killer appears soon after, the old story suddenly feels very current. The murders target people connected to the same circle, and the growing pattern suggests either a curse or someone using the legend as cover. As suspicion spreads, fear turns inward and family history becomes evidence. This film blends giallo mystery with gothic curse storytelling. Instead of a purely procedural investigation, the narrative plays with superstition, inheritance, and identity. Clues are layered alongside dream imagery and symbolic color design. The killer's red cloak and masked appearance create one of the more iconic visuals in early 70s Italian thrillers. Murder scenes are stylized and dramatic rather than realistic, staged for visual impact. It stands out as a myth-driven giallo. Elegant, colorful, and structured around legend as much as logic. What Have You Done to Solange? 1972. A teacher secretly involved with a student witnesses a killing during a private meeting near the river. When more students from the same school are attacked, he quickly becomes a prime suspect. The investigation uncovers buried trauma connected to a former student named Solange. Each new discovery points back to past abuse, hidden responsibility, and institutional silence. The case grows darker the deeper it goes. Unlike many gialli, this story places heavy emphasis on consequences and accountability. The mystery is tied to systemic wrongdoing rather than random madness. That gives the film a heavier emotional weight than typical entries in the genre. The school setting adds structure and unease, order on the surface, damage underneath. Violence is serious in tone, but not lingered on visually, keeping attention on motive and aftermath. It's widely regarded as one of the most thematically driven giallo thrillers, somber, investigative, and morally focused. The Case of the Bloody Iris, 1972. If you're digging into the giallo craze of the 70s, this is one of those quintessential titles that ticks every single box on the checklist. Directed by Giuliano Carnemeo, it leans heavily into the lurid, stylish tropes that define the genre. a sprawling high-end apartment complex in Genoa, a cast of eccentric and suspicious tenants, and a killer in leather gloves who prefers an oversized razor to any other weapon. It's got that lush, psychedelic visual palette and a haunting hypnotic score by Bruno Nicolai that instantly sets the mood. The narrative follows a beautiful young model who moves into this modernist nightmare, only to realize that her neighbors are all hiding dark, depraved secrets. As the body count starts to climb, the film shifts into a frantic, twist-filled mystery where practically everyone is a viable suspect. What makes this particular entry stand out is its unabashed commitment to the Giallo aesthetic. It's slick, it's voyeuristic, and it maintains a feverish, dreamlike quality that keeps you guessing right up until the final, inevitable reveal of the killer's identity. For fans of the genre, The Case of the Bloody Iris is a highly polished exercise in Italian suspense. It isn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but it delivers the classic formula with enough panache and technical competence to make it a standout. It captures that unique mid-70s obsession with combining high fashion, brutal violence, and complex layered mysteries. If you want a film that looks and feels like a stylish, murderous fever dream, this is a perfect addition to your watch list. Torso, 1973. In a quiet Italian university town, a string of brutal murders begins to spread panic among a group of young art students. Someone in a red scarf is stalking women through the winding streets and misty countryside, killing with surgical precision. When a few survivors retreat to a secluded villa for safety, the killer follows, and the real nightmare begins. Sergio Martino's Torso is often considered the bridge between the stylized giallo thrillers of the early 70s and the slasher films that followed. It combines the visual elegance of Italian horror, bold color, hypnotic camera work, and eerie jazz, with a raw intensity that would soon define American exploitation. Susie Kendall leads the cast with quiet vulnerability, grounding the film's violence in genuine fear rather than spectacle. What sets Torso apart is Martino's control of tone. The first half builds with erotic tension and mystery. The second turns into pure survival horror, stripped of music and glamour. What's left is something cold, human, and terrifyingly real. Stylish, shocking, and influential, Torso feels like the moment 1970s horror stopped looking at the killer as art and started feeling their breath on the back of your neck. Deep Red, 1975. Argento's masterpiece follows a British pianist who witnesses the murder of a psychic who'd sensed a killer's presence in the audience. Trying to help, he glimpses something crucial in the moments after the attack. A detail his mind registers, but can't consciously access. His investigation with a reporter leads deeper into a mystery involving childhood trauma, repressed memories, and a killer willing to eliminate anyone who gets close to the truth. Argento achieves visual mastery with elaborate camera movements that prowl through spaces with predatory grace. The set pieces are baroque and brutal. The opening murder, with its elaborate staging, the bathroom drowning with scalding water, the elevator decapitation that remains one of horror's most visceral sequences. The practical effects emphasize the physicality and messiness of violence in ways that still shock. The film runs over 2 hours in its complete version, Argento taking time to develop characters and atmosphere before unleashing violence. The mystery solution involves perception and memory. The protagonist's inability to consciously access what he saw becoming central to the plot. Deep Red represents Giallo at absolute peak, every element working in perfect harmony. The House with Laughing Windows, 1976. In a small Italian village surrounded by swamps and silence, a restorer is hired to uncover a church fresco painted by a long-dead artist known for disturbing imagery. As he begins his work, whispers spread through the town, stories of madness, murder, and the painter's obsession with capturing real suffering. The further he digs into the art, the more he realizes that the horror behind it never truly ended. Pupi Avati's The House with Laughing Windows is one of the great slow-burn mysteries of Italian horror, a film steeped in dread rather than spectacle. Instead of Giallo-style excess or flashy violence, it builds unease through atmosphere. Decaying buildings, strange villagers, and the constant hum of something unseen. The beauty of the Italian countryside becomes a trap, its warmth concealing rot beneath the surface. Avati directs with painterly precision, blending mystery, folklore, and psychological terror into a seamless whole. Every clue feels cursed, every smile conceals something sinister. By the time the truth is revealed, the viewer feels as trapped as the protagonist. Unearthed by horror fans decades later, The House with Laughing Windows has earned its place as a masterpiece of mood and suggestion. Proof that true fear doesn't need spectacle, only silence and time to take root. The Psychic, 1977. A woman plagued by psychic visions witnesses a murder that may not have happened yet, or may have already occurred. While renovating a rural estate with her husband, she discovers a sealed wall identical to one from her visions. Behind it lies a skeleton, forcing her to question whether her premonitions are warnings or inevitabilities. Fulci approaches the material with restraint, focusing on tension rather than violence. Jennifer O'Neill delivers a controlled, emotionally grounded performance as the visions intensify. Gabriele Forzetti plays her husband with subtle ambiguity, never fully reassuring. The film's structure folds time in on itself, deliberately disorienting the viewer. Instead of gore, Fulci builds dread through editing and sound. Psychic episodes arrive as fragments, symbols, flashes, half-formed meanings. Each discovery complicates the mystery rather than solving it. The quiet Italian countryside contrasts sharply with the growing sense of paranoia. The Psychic is one of Fulci's most disciplined films. It's quiet, cerebral, and carefully constructed, leading to a conclusion that recontextualizes everything that came before. Tenebrae, 1982. An American mystery writer travels to Rome to promote his latest thriller, only to discover a serial killer is murdering victims and leaving pages from his book at crime scenes. As he assists police and the bodies accumulate, questions arise about the killer's identity and whether his writing has inspired real violence or if something more complex connects him to the crimes. Argento shoots Rome in blazing white light rather than his usual colored gels, creating sterile modernist spaces that contrast with the Baroque violence. The film feels like response to critics who accuse Giallo of misogyny, exploring those themes directly through the writer's work and the killer's motivations. The centerpiece crane shot that travels up a building exterior, over the roof, and down to witness a double murder remains one of cinema's most elaborate tracking shots. The kill sequences are brutal and explicit, even by Argento standards. Axe murders with arterial spray painting walls, razor blade attacks, climactic revelations and violence. The twist ending recontextualizes everything, delivering one of Giallo's most complex solutions. Tenebrae works as both Giallo peak and Argento's commentary on the genre he helped define.
That's it for tonight's episode. If you want to help us keep the archive alive and growing, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. And remember, always be kind and rewind, because every movie is somebody's favorite.